An elderly woman drops her wallet in a quiet park, unaware it's gone. A stranger picks it up, thinking he's just returning a lost item. But inside, he finds more than money, a handwritten note that reveals her loneliness and changes everything. Hello and welcome back to Tales with Sekos. Today I'm going to share a story which isn't about kindness. It's about connection, courage, and how one small act can transform two lives forever. Stay with me. You won't believe what happens next. You're sitting on a park bench, watching the world go by. The sun filters through the trees, casting golden patterns on the ground. Children laugh as they chase each other across the grass, and the distant hum of conversation fills the air. It's one of those rare moments when life feels peaceful, almost perfect. But then, something small yet significant happens, something that changes everything. An elderly woman walks slowly along the path, her cane tapping softly against the pavement. She pauses for a moment to adjust the scarf around her neck, her hands trembling slightly with age. And then it happens, a simple misstep. Her wallet slips from her bag, landing unnoticed on the ground behind her. For a brief moment, no one seems to notice, not the joggers passing by, not the young couple engrossed in their conversation, and certainly not the elderly woman herself, who continues walking as if nothing has happened. But here's the thing about moments like these. They don't exist in isolation. Someone always notices, someone always cares, and today that someone was a stranger named Daniel. Daniel wasn't anyone special, at least not in the way we often define special. He was just an ordinary guy, out for his usual morning run. 28 years old, with messy hair and a hoodie that had seen better days, he blended into the crowd effortlessly. But what set Daniel apart wasn't his appearance or his achievements, it was his heart. You see, Daniel had a habit of noticing things others overlooked. A forgotten grocery bag at the checkout counter, a stray dog wandering aimlessly near the bus stop, or, in this case, a leather wallet lying abandoned on the path. At first glance, it didn't look like much, just a plain brown wallet, worn down from years of use. But something about it caught Daniel's eye. Maybe it was the way it seemed so out of place amidst the vibrant colors of autumn leaves scattered around it. Or maybe it was the realization that whoever had lost it might be panicking right now, retracing their steps in search of it. Whatever the reason, Daniel bent down, picked it up, and opened it cautiously. Inside, he found exactly what you'd expect. A few crumpled bills, some coins, a faded driver's license, and a handful of receipts. But there was also something unexpected. A small photograph tucked carefully behind the plastic window. In the picture was an elderly couple, smiling broadly as they stood arm in arm in front of a modest house. Their faces were lined with age, but their eyes sparkled with joy. It was clear this photo meant something, to the woman who owned the wallet, and perhaps to Daniel too. He stared at the photo for a moment longer than necessary, feeling an odd mix of curiosity and responsibility wash over him. Who were these people? What stories did they hold? And most importantly, how could he return this wallet to its rightful owner? Daniel glanced up, scanning the park for any sign of the woman. She was already several yards away, her figure growing smaller with each step. Without hesitation, he broke into a jog, clutching the wallet tightly in his hand. When he finally caught up to her, he called out gently, "Excuse me, Mom, I think you dropped this." The woman turned slowly, her expression cautious at first. But when she saw the wallet in Daniel's hand, her face softened instantly. "Oh my goodness," she whispered, pressing a hand to her chest. "I didn't even realize it was gone. Thank you so much, young man." Her gratitude was palpable, radiating from every word she spoke. But what happened next wasn't just a simple exchange of thanks. It was the beginning of something extraordinary. As Daniel handed over the wallet, the woman hesitated for a moment, as if debating whether to say something more. Then, with a shy smile, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "This is for you," she said quietly, pressing it into his palm. Before Daniel could respond, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Confused but intrigued, Daniel unfolded the paper. What he read left him speechless, and set into motion a chain of events that would change his life forever. Daniel stood frozen on the path, the folded piece of paper trembling slightly in his hands. The park around him seemed to fade into the background as he unfolded it, revealing neat handwriting scrawled across the page. At first glance, it appeared to be nothing more than a simple note. But as Daniel read the words, he realized this was no ordinary message. It was an invitation, a quiet, heartfelt plea for help. The note began with a single sentence. "If you're reading this, then fate has brought us together." Daniel's brow furrowed as he continued. The elderly woman explained that she and her husband had lived modestly all their lives, saving every penny they could to leave behind something meaningful for their grandchildren. But recently, life had thrown them an unexpected curveball. Her husband had fallen ill, and mounting medical bills were threatening to drain everything they'd worked so hard to build. She went on to write about how overwhelmed she felt, not just by the financial burden, but by the loneliness that came with watching someone you love suffer. "I don't expect anyone to fix our problems," she admitted. "But if you're willing, I could use a friend. Someone to share a cup of tea with or lend an ear when the days feel too heavy. If you're able, please visit me at the address on my license. No obligations, just kindness." For a moment, Daniel couldn't move. He stared at the note, rereading it several times to make sure he wasn't imagining things. This wasn't what he'd expected when he picked up the wallet. He thought he'd simply return a lost item and go on with his day. Instead, he found himself holding not just a wallet, but a lifeline, an opportunity to make a difference in someone's life. But here's the thing about opportunities like these. They come with choices. Daniel could have walked away, tucked the note into his pocket, and forgotten about it entirely. After all, he didn't owe this woman anything. She was a stranger, and helping her would require time, effort, and emotional investment. Yet, deep down, Daniel knew he couldn't ignore her plea. Something about her vulnerability and the quiet dignity with which she'd asked for help resonated with him. So, after a brief internal debate, he made a decision. He would visit her. The next morning, armed with nothing but the address from her driver's license and a box of cookies he'd picked up at the bakery, Daniel set out to find her. The address led him to a small house nestled at the edge of town, surrounded by overgrown bushes and wilting flower beds. It looked tired, much like the woman who answered the door when he knocked. She blinked in surprise when she saw him standing there, clutching the box of cookies awkwardly. "You came," she said softly, her voice tinged with disbelief. "I wasn't sure you would." Daniel smiled sheepishly. "Well, I figured cookies are always a good icebreaker." The woman chuckled, stepping aside to let him in. As they sat together in her cozy living room, sipping tea and sharing stories, Daniel began to understand the weight she carried. Her name was Margaret, and her husband Harold had been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease 2 years earlier. While his condition hadn't worsened dramatically yet, the toll it took on both of them was evident. Margaret spoke openly about the challenges they faced, the sleepless nights, the endless doctor appointments, the fear of the unknown, but also about the love that kept them going. By the end of their conversation, Daniel felt a strange mix of emotions: sadness for what Margaret and Harold were enduring, admiration for their resilience, and a newfound sense of purpose. Before leaving, he promised to return the following week, and true to his word, he did. Then again, the week after that. Slowly but surely, a friendship blossomed between them. One built on trust, compassion, and mutual respect. Over time, Daniel began helping in ways he hadn't anticipated. He mowed their lawn, fixed the leaky faucet in their kitchen, and even accompanied Margaret to Harold's doctor appointments when she needed support. In return, Margaret shared stories of her life, the joys, the heartbreaks, the lessons learned along the way. She reminded Daniel of the beauty and simplicity, the importance of connection, and the power of kindness to transcend boundaries. But here's the twist. Daniel wasn't the only one whose life was transformed by this newfound friendship. Word of his visits spread through the neighborhood, inspiring others to reach out to Margaret and Harold as well. Neighbors who had once been distant began stopping by with meals or offers to help. A local church group organized a fundraiser to ease their financial strain. Even Harold, despite his declining health, started smiling more often, buoyed by the outpouring of love and support. Yet, as uplifting as these developments were, they weren't the end of the story. What happened next would take everyone, including Daniel, by surprise. As weeks turned into months, Daniel's visits became a cornerstone of Margaret and Harold's lives. What began as a simple act of returning a wallet had blossomed into something far greater, a bond that bridged generations, rekindled hope, and reminded everyone involved of the profound impact kindness can have. But just when it seemed like their story had reached its peak, fate stepped in once again to write an unexpected chapter. One crisp autumn morning, Daniel arrived at the house as usual, carrying a bag of groceries and a cheerful smile. However, the atmosphere inside was different this time. The air felt heavier, quieter. Margaret greeted him with red-rimmed eyes, her hands trembling as she clutched the tissue. "Harold passed away last night," she whispered, her voice breaking under the weight of grief. "He went peacefully, in his sleep." Daniel's heart sank. For all the progress they'd made, for all the laughter and shared moments, nothing could prepare him, or Margaret, for this loss. Yet, even amidst the sorrow, there was a glimmer of peace. Harold's final days had been filled with love, surrounded by people who cared deeply about him. And while his absence left a void, his legacy lived on, not just in memories, but in the ripple effect of kindness he and Margaret had inspired. In the days that followed, Daniel stayed close to Margaret, helping her navigate the overwhelming logistics of saying goodbye. Together, they sorted through Harold's belongings, shared stories of happier times, and planned a small memorial service to honor his life. It was during one of these quiet afternoons that Margaret handed Daniel a letter addressed to him. "Harold wrote this before he passed," she explained softly. "He wanted you to have it." With trembling hands, Daniel opened the envelope. Inside, Harold's handwriting, shaky but legible, spoke volumes. "Dear Daniel, I may not have said it often enough, but thank you. Thank you for showing up when we needed someone most. You reminded us that no matter how dark things seem, there's always light waiting to break through. Because of you, our final chapter together wasn't defined by illness or fear. It was defined by love, connection, and humanity. Please don't stop being the person you are. The world needs more people like you. Take care of yourself, and know that you'll always hold a special place in our hearts." By the time Daniel finished reading, tears streamed freely down his face. He hadn't realized until that moment just how much Harold's words would mean to him, not just as a tribute, but as a reminder of why he'd chosen to help in the first place. Kindness isn't about grand gestures or seeking recognition. It's about showing up, even when it's inconvenient, and letting someone know they're not alone. But the story doesn't end there. Inspired by Harold's letter and Margaret's resilience, Daniel decided to pay their generosity forward. He began volunteering at a local senior center, organizing events to bring neighbors together, and encouraging others to embrace acts of kindness in their own lives. Slowly but surely, the ripple effect grew. People who had never met Margaret or Harold started sharing their own stories of compassion, proving that even the smallest actions can spark monumental change. Years later, when asked about that fateful day in the park, Daniel would smile and say, "I thought I was helping her, but really, she saved me." Margaret taught him the value of slowing down, listening deeply, and cherishing the connections that make life meaningful. And Harold reminded him that love endures, even after we're gone, if we choose to let it live on through others. Today, Daniel keeps the photograph of Margaret and Harold tucked safely in his wallet, a constant reminder of the strangers who became family and the extraordinary power of human connection. Their story serves as a testament to the idea that kindness isn't just an action, it's a chain reaction. One small gesture can inspire another, creating waves of positivity that touch countless lives. So the next time you find yourself walking through a park, or anywhere, really, and notice something out of place, take a moment to pause. You never know whose life you might change with a single act of kindness. After all, sometimes the smallest steps lead to the biggest journeys. And who knows, you might just discover that the person you're helping ends up changing your life too.